So thank you to everyone who came to this afternoon's webinar on Zoom. Despite the many notes I left myself and the fact I even talked to everyone about hitting record, I did not hit record. So this is a quick recording of the session that we did. I really hope that you find it helpful. So we were thinking today about EBSA, emotionally based school avoidance, or emotional barriers to school attendance was a new suggestion for this acronym, children who are struggling to come to school, and what we can do to support with morning anxiety. So the first thing we talked about was the 2-minute rule for morning meltdowns. And the idea here is that when a child arrives at school in a heightened state of anxiety, that sometimes rather than swooping in, what we need to do is to step back and be the cool, calm, in control adult, but a little bit more in the background, allowing them space and time to regulate themselves. Now, this is partly because actually we hopefully, aside from everything else, will be teaching them the skills, the activities, and giving them the knowledge they need to begin to regulate themselves. And it's important for them to practice these skills, and that can feel very empowering. But also because if, as the adult, we do swoop in, this sends a very clear message to the child that there was reason to be concerned here, that their anxiety was appropriately placed and that they should be fearful. And this can actually build the anxiety. It gives the brain feedback that, yeah, this was a scary situation. Mr. Smith jumped in to help me, so it must have been bad. And so we don't want that to happen. So we want to give them a little bit of space and time. So even just a couple of minutes whilst we allow that anxiety to calm. The other thing here is that our anxious response will not stay at a peak for a very long time. It does tend to dissipate over time a little bit, and it's really powerful for children to see that happen. So we might do this differently in different environments. So primary, we might just kind of have ourselves sort of nearby, make ourselves available to the child if they want to, think about our body language, think about our breathing. Secondary school, we might give a child a space that they go and attend. So they might be going to their form room, a common room, they might be going to a learning resource centre, somewhere where they can go and calm, and there might be a supporting adult in the room should they need them. Special school and alternative provision, this might be different again. We might have individualised plans for individual children, work closely with family to see what that adult support needs to look like, and recognising that some of these children might need a bit of a longer settling in period. Number 2 is about using your voice as a thermostat. So the idea here is that not just the words that we say, but more crucially, how we say them has a really big impact on how children are feeling. So we are genetically programmed to kind of mirror the feeling in the room. So if we come in and someone is high energy and excited, then that tends to bring us up. And we all know that person who, when they enter the room, everything seems to fall away and it all becomes rather dark and gloomy. What we want in this situation is to hack this a bit and have this child's mirror neurons, which are sort of predestined to mirror how we're feeling, to catch our calm rather than us catching their anxiety. Now, we're going to do this using things like our voice. So we can use our slow, low, low. We're going to lower the volume of our voice, so speak more quietly. We're going to slow things down, and we're going to lower the pitch. We're going to speak a little bit more Barry White. We do this because when we are anxious, when we are angry, we speak loud and shrill and fast, and we're trying to do the opposite of that by just calming things down and feeling really warm and comforting for these anxious pupils, giving them a bit of an audible hug, talking to them in the same way that we might read a bedtime story. They need this from us. They need us to be the swan. They need us to be that cool, calm, collected adult who appears to be gliding effortlessly through things. We've got this, we're in control, even if we're actually frantically paddling beneath the surface. Another couple of pointers here: pausing between sentences to give a child space to process can help to reduce that anxiety, enable them to actually follow any instructions or support they might be being given at times when processing becomes more challenging because they're overloaded. And then matching our pace to what the most anxious pupil can manage. So if you've got a whole group of pupils or a whole class, if you've got one who's struggling to keep up because they're quite anxious and they're quite overloaded, let's slow things down to their pace. No one else is going to be put at a disadvantage because of that. Everyone is then being brought along together. Okay, the idea number 3 of our 7 is flexible arrival options. So this is thinking about that moment when we arrive at school in the morning alongside 1,500 other people. How can we make this just a little bit more comfy for a student who might find it a little bit stressful to arrive at school alongside 1,500 other people? Maybe they are sensorily overwhelmed. Maybe they don't like it when people touch and jostle them. Maybe the noise is just too much. Maybe they've had friendship issues and they're worried about bumping into a certain someone. Whatever it might be, we can think about having different arrival arrangements. They might come early, they might come late, they might go through a different entrance, they might go to a different place. So we can think about this according to what's possible in our setting. There's always something we can do, but it might be that there's a side entrance. It might be that we go with the office staff. It might be that there's special quiet places that we can settle either within class or in a different place. In a secondary school, often we've got loads of different entrances going on, and a child might have permission to enter via a different entrance rather than joining the melee. It might also be that they're allowed to access quieter spaces rather than joining big things like assembly as the first port of call of the day. And again, within special and AP, then we might find that we have to have particular specific strategies in place. And I'd particularly ask you to think about what happens for children coming via transport, how within our special and alternative provision, we enable that transition, which can be quite challenging. Getting a child onto transport and then the actual transport itself can have already been quite overwhelming for a child. As time goes on, this can often be a really regulating part of their day, but particularly earlier on, as they're still getting used to it, it can be really difficult. So thinking about how that transition works. And even once it might be a good part of their day, it's still a transition, and transitions are hard. So what happens when they leave transport and they arrive at school? How do we enable that transition to be one that helps them to regulate and ready for learning? Okay, number 4 was about spotting the difference between anxiety and overwhelm. Sometimes we get both at the same time. That's not really uncommon, but sometimes we've got one or the other. And if we don't know what we're looking at, sometimes we do the wrong thing. So sometimes a pupil is like emotionally overwhelmed. They're anxious about what's going to happen. They're scared, basically, and they need support, scaffolding, reassurance. They need emotional support. On the other hand, sometimes a pupil is overwhelmed. It might be that there's too much noise, there's too many people, there's too many smells, there's too much something. And what they need is a calm environment. And if we don't know which we're looking at, and they might look kind of similar, but if we don't know which it is that we're looking at, and we kind of treat for the wrong thing, if you like, then we can make things worse. So if you've got a child who is neurodivergent and they're completely overwhelmed by the scenario, there's too much noise, there's too many smells, there's too many people, and we start trying to scaffold and support, we start trying to say kind things and explain how the day is going to go, that can just be increasing input for them that is going to increase the overwhelm. If, on the other hand, we've got the child who's really scared about going to maths, like maths was difficult yesterday, and they're really worried about going today, they don't understand what's going on, they're very fearful about it, and we start saying to them, okay, let's just take you to a nice calm space and we'll do some colouring in and we'll make sure the lights are dimmed and there's not too much noise. Like, that might help a little bit, but it's not going to overcome the maths anxiety. So understanding whether we're seeing anxiety or overwhelm can be genuinely really quite helpful. Sometimes you're going to be seeing kind of both at the same time, but it's helpful just to know that sometimes you might be seeing one or the other and what that looks like. So hopefully this slide helps just a little bit with that. So anxiety tends to be more worry about the future, fearful about things that are going to happen, seeking reassurance. What if this happens? Well, I have to do that. What they need information, they need emotional support, they need scaffolding. They need to work out how we're going to manage the things that are making them anxious. How is it going to be possible to do those things and them not be too scary and anxiety provoking? Overwhelm, on the other hand, is just too much going on right now. This might be a child that goes into shutdown or meltdown. They're not processing what we're saying because their bandwidth is low because there's just too much. What they need is just demands taken away. That includes the demand of conversation quite often. They need to go somewhere calm and quiet to have a break from all the sensory input and to be able to get to a point of regulation. And then they may well enjoy going along to maths, unlike our anxious child, because what they need is just to get away from all the noise and the smells and the stuff. So really quite different things going on here for these different children potentially. Okay, number 5 was about having discrete check-ins, because not every child wants to have it really obvious that they're struggling. Sometimes they just want to be with their friends, they want to be like their friends, and they want to be just doing normal stuff like everyone else. And so we might be wanting to check in with them in order to make sure they're okay and whether there's anything we can do to support, but we want to do this in a discreet way. It might be that the child just gives us a number from 1 to 10 as they walk past us. Maybe they put a red pen on their desk if they need us to come and check in on them. We can have all sorts of different communication systems that we agree with the child. Maybe it's a thumb up, thumb down kind of thing. You'll get to know a child and their tics and nuances really quickly when it comes to this kind of thing, and you'll soon know, on a thermometer that this is okay when Tim says this, but if it's just this tiny bit more this way, you need to check in with him quietly and discreetly at another time. So yeah, it doesn't really matter what the system is here. It's about respecting that some children need additional support. They need us to check in, but they don't want us to do that in a really big, overbearing way that might make them feel a bit ashamed or embarrassed in front of their friends, essentially. Okay, number 6 was the morning buffer conversation. So this is recognizing that sometimes our child arrives at school and they're already at a point of shutdown, meltdown. Things have already gotten to quite a challenging state before they've even set foot in school. So what we're going to do here is to work with our families and begin to get curious and explore what's going on in the mornings. At what point do things begin to feel more difficult? Are there particular triggers that we can address here? When do we first notice these signs of distress? Are there things that we can be doing to calm stuff down here? And there were requests in the chat afterwards that whether I could put together some sort of resource that we can use to support parents in order to work with our children and young people in the morning before they come to school, to give some parents and carers some advice about this. And one of the things I did say is we've got to be a team here. So this isn't about us blaming parents and saying, oh, your child's already dysregulated by the time they get to school. Parents and carers will have done their absolute best, but it may well be that, I don't know, it's when they put their geography book in their bag and there's something about the geography lesson that is triggering something for them, and we need to recognize that and say, okay, let's get curious about geography. What is it that's going on here? What can we address? But yeah, get curious. Use your detective skills with families, with the child, to understand at what point do things begin to unravel and how might we be able to do things a bit differently in order to enable that child to stay regulated and to engage with school in a way that feels safe and good for them. And number 7 was to normalise practice rounds. So the idea here is that we need to make it okay not to get it all right all the time, because we all have good days and we all have bad days. And some of these kids will have way more bad days than good days. And what we want to do here is to learn each day something, no matter how tiny, even if the thing we learned was, let's not do it like that again. That's okay. That's valid learning. Our children need to have the chance to feel like a success. So we're going to end those difficult mornings with on a note of hope. We're going to look at what we've learned. Not at the time of distress, we're going to reflect on it later at a time of calm. We're going to celebrate those little improvements and we'll keep a record of what's gone well. And crucially, tomorrow is a fresh start. We're not going to make a big deal again and again about how bad today was, but we're going to instead be hopeful about tomorrow and think about what we might do a little bit differently as a result of what we learned. Now, one of the things I kind of glossed over there a bit was discuss this at a time of calm, not at the point that the child's in complete meltdown and it's all gone a bit awry as we're trying to get into school. We're not going, well, okay, what are the learning things here? And the child's just melting down. No, don't do that. Let them go home or wherever, let them regulate, let's get calm, let's wait till parents are calm, let's wait till we're calm, and then we're going to have a conversation. What did we learn from today and what are we going to try a bit differently tomorrow? Tiny steps are going to be your answer here. Don't try to do too much too soon. Do small things, celebrate them, and then build on them. Okay, so you had your 7 quick wins here. So number 1, the 2-minute rule. 2-minute rule, we're going to allow the child a couple of minutes to try and regulate themselves before we jump in, because that can make the fear bigger. Number 2 is your voice as a thermostat, that audible hug that lets them know that you're in control, everything's okay, and we're going to calm things down with our lovely slow, low voices. Number 3 was flexible arrival option, so the child can arrive at a different time or a different place than the 1,500 other kids that might make it feel hard. Number 4 was spotting anxiety versus overwhelm. Is this child anxious or are they overwhelmed? And what are we going to do differently as a result of knowing that? Number 5 was discrete check-ins, so that children who need a bit of support, we have the opportunity just to check that they're okay without making it a big deal in front of their mates. Number 6 was your morning buffer conversation, a chat with mum, dad, carer, someone at home, maybe the child themselves, exploring at what point do things begin to unravel and what can we do differently here. And number 7 was to normalise practice rounds, to make it okay for the morning not to go okay, and to try to learn something from that and to do something different tomorrow without placing blame or shame on what went wrong today, just seeing it as a learning opportunity. I really hope that there was something helpful in there. I will share a link in the description to my Preventing EBSA online training course, should you wish to go and dive a little bit deeper. I really hope that those of you who attended found it to be a useful session this afternoon, and that many of you will come again another time. And do let me know what you would like from these sessions. I very much hope this will become a regular thing.